Hello everyone, I hope you're all well, and thanks very much for all the likes, shares and comments with my videos. I'm very grateful. Last night in Ireland we had the resignation of Leo Varadkar, where he turned up at Ars Neutron and tendered his resignation to Michael D. Higgins, President, Neutron na Héireann, in Ars Neutron in the Phoenix Park. Now, this precipitates the vote today of Simon Harris, who will be the newly appointed Taoiseach, because a couple of more independents have decided to support him. I spoke the other day in a video about a number of independents that would support Harris, and Peter Fitzpatrick, ex-Fine Gael, unsurprisingly, is the next Fine Gael independent to vote Simon Harris. And we have Cathal Berry again, warmonger as well. Cathal Berry, who wants to drag Ireland into NATO, is of course supporting Simon Harris. But it was interesting yesterday with Varadkar's final interview on RTE that he was asked about any regrets as Taoiseach, and he said it was too much caution with the economy. His regrets wasn't the record homelessness, record disastrous amount of people, over 1 million people on hospital waiting lists, record amounts of evictions, so many people struggling to get a roof over their head, huge immigration, didn't mention that whatsoever, but spoke about his proud record and successes. But what we would expect from RTE and Leo Varadkar. RTE is the national state propagandist who gets funded so much money from the public force and claim they're independent. So let me know what you think of that. But it's interesting because Varadkar, he said he's going to take a summer holiday, and he probably won't stand again as a TD in the election, whenever that's going to come, if it's the autumn or the early 2025. We'll see how that develops. But he's liable to get a big parachute payment if he calls time on his position as a TD, up to €280,000 he's going to be guaranteed as a parachute soft landing payment when he finishes up. That'll be paid in a 2 months upfront payment, and then on top of that he'll get a monthly payment as well to cover that €280,000, probably for tax reasons obviously. But in the last number of days there has been an increase in salaries for these politicians, completely out of touch politicians. The Department for Public Expenditure and Reform, in inverted commas reform, spoke about increases for salaries. The Taoiseach, who were just waiting for Simon Harris to be in that position, is on just short of €240,000 per year. And if you consider most people in Ireland are struggling to keep a roof over their head, to keep heating bills because it's been particularly cold and wet in Ireland for the last number of months. The farmers are suffering, so many people are suffering because of this as well, in terms of struggling to pay the extortionate heating bills. And the Taoiseach's salary is up to €220,000. And senior ministers, when Harris appoints his new cabinet today, will be on over €200,000. And junior ministers will be on €169,000. And TDs themselves are on €111,000 and €429. Don't forget that on top of the €111,000. Not to mention their expenses, not to mention all their advisors, not to mention all their huge amount of state funding that comes with these political parties as well, that keeps the system intact and the corrupt status quo intact in Ireland. Now, it's also interesting because when these parachute payments are going to be paid, they'll be paid to people like Richard Bruton, who's one of the richest TDs in it all, comes from a rich farming family in Meath, brother of recently deceased ex-Taoiseach John Bruton. Joe McHugh, Charlie Flanagan, another Fine Gael minister, Michael Creed, who was Minister for Agriculture, and then Brendan Griffin, John Paul Phelan, Paul Keogh, Josepha Madigan, and there will be a number more that will be still entitled to big pensions, such as Fergus O'Dowd, David Stanton, and will be on huge pensions. But the ministerial pensions, of course, will be worth a hell of a lot more than just the poor, unfortunate TDs on their big gold-plated pension pot. So it's interesting, when you're self-employed, if you finish your job, if you lose your job because of illness, or to close your business because of extortionate costs, We see that with the cost of living disaster in Ireland as well. More and more small businesses closing locally and nationally. You get absolutely nothing. For an employee that's let go, it's basic statutory redundancy for so many employees. And a lot would have to pursue that as well through the WRC if they're looking for stuff like extra in terms of the Labour Court and the Workplace Relations Commission and all this sort of stuff as well, to stand up for better payment for a lot of workers who were laid off as well. But of course the politicians are well looked after. People like Owen Murphy, who was particularly young when he left as Housing Minister, he got a parachute payment of €150,000 to soften his cough before he moved on to works in the private sector. And so many of these politicians go and work in the private sector when they depose and leave their positions as politicians and work in the financial services sector. People like Brian Hayes, who's the head of the banking federations in Ireland. It shows the whole corrupt golden circle in Irish society. And people like Michael Darcy, who was a Fine Gael senator, who went off as well and worked with a vulture fund also. And also Enda Kenny, of course, famous Taoiseach, who said Ireland was a great country for a great little country to do business in, which essentially means open the doors to the multinationals and the vulture funds to come in. Is now working with a vulture fund himself, and the Kenny as well. But of course, a lot of this stuff isn't transparent, and there has been freedom of information requests put forward to try and get the amount of figures that these politicians are being paid in terms of their huge pension pot and the parachute payments as well. Not to mention senior civil servants. Many senior civil servants, over 320 I think in Ireland, are on pensions are over €75,000 per year, which is absolutely extortionate. And if you consider what the average pensioner gets paid, just over €200 per week in Ireland, that would be 7 times what a lot of pensioners are getting in Ireland, or the average state pension what people get when they reach the age of 66 here in Ireland. And as we know, the huge amount of elderly that are struggling to keep their heating on, pay their food bills as well. And 1 in 3 people in Ireland don't have any pensions. But again, if you're a politician, you're well looked after, because so many of them are millionaires. 42% of them are listed as millionaires, and completely out of touch with the lived reality of ordinary people. So there we have it. Leo Varadkar will be heading off into the sunset on a huge pension. His pension will probably be worth up to a couple of €1 million. He will be riding off into the sunset looking for a new job. Perhaps, maybe has a job lined up. He's done the damage in Ireland in terms of the devastation he's caused with his economic policies, and his only regret was too much caution with the economy. His regret wasn't about record homelessness, children waiting on spinal surgery, wasn't on people struggling to keep a roof over their head, record amount of evictions, and not to mention the huge restrictions on people's rights. And of course he oversaw the disaster that was the COVID lockdowns that created the biggest transfer of wealth towards the billionaires in society. He had huge restrictions on people's basic civil liberties, such as a right to informed consent, and many more rights. He brought vaccine passports in, himself and Micheál Martin as well. So this is a legacy of these people that work for the globalists, work for the European Union, work for the super rich and wealthy in society, and don't work for ordinary people. We need to bring democracy back to our communities and back to our daily lives, where our voices are heard, we're listened to, and our voices are a central part of the decision-making process in Ireland, and learning that we're proud of, not in Ireland, but the corrupt political classes in Ireland that are completely out of touch, completely disconnected, and completely disengaged from the lived experiences of ordinary people here in Ireland. So thanks for joining me on my videos. Really appreciate all the support. And please press subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please press like my Facebook page also as well, and follow me on different platforms as well. So from Dublin today in the early morning, Slán, take care, bye bye.